Hi, Rollie. How are you?
Great. How are you, Vanchika?
I'm good.
Did I get your name right?
Yes, you did.
Nailed it. Vanchika. No stressed syllables.
Exactly. So, tell us about Climate Town. How did it start?
Yeah. Climate Town is a YouTube channel. I assume if you're watching this on YouTube, you probably you could navigate there so easy from just the search bar even. Yeah. It's a deep dive comedy series about the climate crisis. Every episode is between, I don't know, we started out making like 10-minute episodes, and now they're up to about half-hour episodes, but they all cover some specific part of the climate crisis, and in order to make people want to watch them, we make them funny. And I know they don't sound funny like on paper, but we do put a lot of work into them to make them as funny as I can possibly make them.
No, I watched a couple of videos in my research, and they are funny. I recently watched your Chicago video because that was like the latest one.
Thank you for watching that.
Yes, of course. And yes, it was funny. I agree. So how did you get into how did you combine comedy and climate?
Oh, yeah. So I moved to New York to do comedy. Not a twinkle in my eye about the climate crisis, other than being vaguely worried about it for the sake of myself and humanity. And then I did comedy for many years in New York, and eventually I was given the opportunity to put a show up at the Annoyance Theater in Brooklyn. So there was like a short-lived comedy theater in Brooklyn called The Annoyance. They had a spot available, and I put up a comedy show that was called An Inconvenient Show or something. An Inconvenient Truth 2 was that was the name of the original show, where I was like, oh, it'd be funny to be Al Gore and to sort of talk about the life of Al Gore and go on an I told you so tour, and like, I called climate change and no one listened and now it's happening. Like that was kind of the premise of that show. And then it just sort of grew and grew, and I put it up at various other venues, and eventually I put it up at Caveat Theater in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And after a couple of months of doing that show, I realized like, oh, I should probably go back to school and get an education in climate science. And so I went back to Columbia and got a degree in climate science and policy from Columbia to make my comedy show better, and also to take out a ton of student loans, obviously. And then the pandemic hit and shut down the comedy show. And so I moved it to YouTube and started Climate Town.
Wow. Okay, so you first started into comedy and then you got the degree in climate.
Yeah.
But were your jokes already encompassing talking about climate?
No, not at all. I mean, again, like I moved to New York just for the comedy aspect. So I was doing improv comedy. I was taking classes at the UCB and at the Annoyance and putting up shows for like 3 people. Like these were not good shows. If I watched them again, I would try to bury that, like it wasn't like performing good material, but I was like doing comedy and becoming a comedian and learning what my voice was. And then eventually I got the opportunity to do a show that in some way incorporated the climate crisis almost as a byproduct of being about Al Gore. I just thought like Al Gore is an interesting, sympathetic character in Americana. Mm-hmm. And his shtick is like he loves the internet, and he wrote a best-selling movie about climate change, and so you have to incorporate those things in your show about his life, and that's how I got reintroduced to the climate crisis.
How do you make sure through your videos that people actually take action?
I think for me it's more about like providing the opportunity and showing a pathway to how they could take action, but then not like trying to shame them for not taking the action. Like I think it's as hands off as I can be. Like here are all the possibilities that I could think of that you might immediately be able to like click a thing and then get involved in some way. And I'm not gonna force you to do anything more than that, because I think I'm like thinking of myself as the top of the funnel, maybe, where it's like I'm just trying to get people acclimated to the idea that there are lots of places that they can spend their time in a positive way, but not necessarily like, I only care about this one issue, so like donate money to this thing. Like that's kind of not what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I'm more on the information side, I think.
So that's a perfect segue.
Nice. Nailed it.
Research is important, right? When you're giving out information, when you're making informative videos, research is important. Mm-hmm. So how do you make sure that you fact check everything and that whatever you're putting out in the video is just like absolutely dead on correct?
Sure. Yeah, I think a healthy level of anxiety about being wrong forever is important. And when you put a YouTube video out, like it's out. I can't edit it after I've published it. All I could do is like delete it if I got something wrong, like, and I don't want to do that. So like I spend a couple months per video, and that's a lot of work to just delete if I got something wrong. So part of it is fueled from a desire to not get something wrong. And then you backtrack from there. Like, how do you do that? Well, number one, you use a very broad amount of sources, and you cross-reference them and you cross-check them, and then you take what you've got to an expert who's not involved in your organization, but who you trust. So I went to Columbia. I got a lot of professors that I really trust. Yeah. We've had a lot of we've worked with a lot of organizations that have experts that they trust. So we'll talk to these experts. We'll give them all. We'll show them all the information we got and where we got it, and then see what we got wrong. Because so one thing you could do is you can go straight to the expert, but then now you're officially like kind of just using one expert's point of view as the point of view for your video, which you don't want to do. You want to really like diversify your sources. So what we like to do is do a lot of research from a lot of different sources right off the bat, and then go to an expert and then re-research based on that directional shift, and then go to a different expert, and then come to a conclusion on our script. And if we have time, we like can go back to the first expert and be like, here's what we got. Then we shoot it. And then in the shooting phase, we're finding little moments throughout the script, and then we are editing it, and we show that edit to another group of experts to make sure that like nothing is wrong. Yeah. I mean, like certainly stuff gets cut and left out, but like the idea I think is that we want to tell a very complete but tight story. Yeah. And the only way we can make sure to do that without getting a bunch of shit wrong is to spend the time like making sure that the things that we're saying aren't like misleading or wrong.
And so when you're coming up with your topics, do you research first about like 10 things that you might want to talk about, or do you usually have a topic in mind that you research about to get all the details on it and then make a video?
It's pretty variable. Sometimes we have a topic that's like, oh my God, this is a great topic. You know, like for instance, when the Center for Climate Reporting did a sting operation on Keith McCoy, who is this lobbyist at Exxon, it was like, oh, this is obviously a great video topic, and it didn't get very many views when they originally did. Not very many, but like it didn't get the wide coverage that I was like, this should definitely get seen by a lot of people. So we took that topic and made a video about it. Like we just knew the topic and we did a line on it. And then other stuff, like we knew we wanted to do something regarding coal. And so we like did a bunch of research on coal as a concept. And we actually started with clean coal and then blew out the topic of like, oh, what else is about coal? Like how does coal interact? Like how much coal are we using in America? How many coal miners were there at the peak? Yeah. And then we like refocused it from a point of like too much information. Yeah. And then we like made a video about clean coal in America.
Yeah. When you started 3 years ago on YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you started, what was the thought then and what is the thought now? What was the goal then and what is the goal now?
Wildly, this was the goal.
Okay.
It was just like have a YouTube channel that gets to do comedy deep dives on the climate crisis. There's kind of a back pocket goal of doing like the Daily Show, but for climate change, or like a Last Week Tonight, but for climate change, which is like, it would be cool to be able to pitch to a network and have them be like, yeah, well, here's all of our resources that, you know, like a real show has, like make a cooler version of this show. So that's still like kind of vaguely on the horizon, hopefully. But I'm shocked to report that it was largely like I want to do like YouTube channel that gets views and like I can say whatever I want on it.
Yeah. Talk shows are the dream.
Everyone loves a talk show. And like, do you watch any talk shows right now?
Yeah.
Oh, you do? I don't. I don't watch a freaking single talk show. And yet, like, for some reason, I'm like, we gotta do a talk show, you know? What talk shows do you watch, for real?
I've seen Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, and Drew Barrymore.
Very cool.
And Drew Barrymore in New York.
You saw Drew Barrymore?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Their shows, obviously.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
talking about, you didn't like run into them on the street.
No. I saw their shows.
You went and sat in the audience. Oh, you love talk shows.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Because it was a dream when I was coming to New York to like be a part of a talk show. So I have to say Stephen Colbert's was probably the best talk show among all of them.
I think I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And our friend of the Climate Down / co-host of the Climate Deniers Playbook, Nicole Conlon, used to write for Late Night with Stephen Colbert.
Wow. Yeah.
She's writing on The Daily Show now, but she used to be on Colbert.
That's amazing.
So maybe you saw something she wrote and you were like, this is the best talk show I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Let's talk about your current podcast.
Oh, sure.
So you were doing a YouTube channel as well and a podcast as well.
That's
How
right.
is it managing two different types of content medium?
That's a great question. And I will say the only way that I can do it is by having a fantastic team.
Yeah.
So if you could imagine, listeners, for a moment, within 3 feet of me is my podcast executive producer. His name is Ben Bolt. And then within 12 feet of me is Matt Nelson, who is the executive producer on the video side. And then also Nicole Conlon, Daily Show writer. That's sort of our core group. And everyone's got different responsibilities. So I don't have to manage any aspect of the podcast, really, besides making sure it's on its path and like making sure Ben has everything he needs. I don't have to manage any part of our newsletter that we have, besides making sure Matt's got what he needs. And then I can come in and do creative involvement. But for the most part, like I'm completely able to trust them with everything.
Yeah.
And that is the key for me.
And how do you manage to get all these talented people in one place? Were they your friends?
They were my friends.
Okay. Are they still your friends?
They are still my friends. Yes. Good question. No, I think it was these people were around when I was coming up in New York for the most part. I actually met Ben through doing the YouTube series, and we were doing each other's projects on various things. And then when I would need a favor, I would know exactly who to go to, like these people that I really trusted their comedic ability and their artistic ability.
Right.
And then over time, when the show started making money and I'm able to pay them a little bit better, that's when you're able to bring them on a more full-time basis.
Yeah.
So the trick is to don't take them for granted, monetize when you can, and then pay them with the money that you are able to monetize, so that you're able to like give them, like more reason to help you other than that they're your friend. You don't want to take advantage of your friends.
Yeah. Speaking of money,
You
travel to various parts of the country, right?
Pretty. It's less often than most episodes we film right in New York, or if we're on vacation, if I'm like back visiting my parents.
Yeah.
I'll shoot a couple episodes in Colorado. So we try to minimize the travel for the most part, or at least historically we have. I think we have a couple of plans on like expanding the scope of videos that will include more travel.
Yeah.
But there's a travel element that I'm like constantly trying to balance between trying to minimize the travel and maximize the amount of videos that I can make.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask, like the Chicago video, for example, you travel. Is it usually like, oh, I'm going to be visiting Chicago and so we can do a video there? Or, oh, I'm going to specifically go to Chicago to do this video while also like being a tourist around there?
Oh, yeah. So they are almost exclusively the first one.
Okay.
So on that particular video, I was in Colorado for like, I think visiting my parents. I think that was that trip. It was like helping them do something. And Matt Parker, the other YouTuber who we were collaborating with, was in South America and coming up through Chicago before doing some other video that he was shooting. And so instead of just flying back from Colorado to New York, I did a stopover in Chicago. And on the one day that Matt and his team were also in Chicago. So we were able to shoot that video out in one day and then continue on back to New York on that. So the idea is no frivolous travel. I think that's like, it's important to remember that taking a single trip in an airplane is like a deep carbon emission. But also like, this is how production happens. You know, you've got to like, sometimes if you're trying to coordinate with another person and they are traveling, you need to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
So that was the calculation there. But for the most part, we just like, hey, we're doing a video about coal. Okay, well, we'll shoot it around Brooklyn and we'll make it look old timey and we'll find some rundown concrete shack and that'll be like the backdrop for a coal section, or like we'll shoot it in a quarry that's nearby. So we don't have to like actually travel.
I mean, we hear the term carbon footprint a lot, carbon emissions a lot. So what can people do to actually reduce it in their day-to-day lives and be more mindful about it?
Yeah, I mean, I always suggest that if you are trying to be mindful about your personal impact on the planet, it is more incumbent on you to try to affect the system around you than it is to try to like make sure you're using your tote bag instead of a plastic bag. Like, obviously it is better to be low impact yourself, and it's much better to figure out ways that you're actually personally impacting your immediate scenario. But this is a systemic problem, and the solutions are also systemic. And the reason why we're not further along is because there aren't more people who are worried in a mass organizational way. And so I think if anyone is like, oh, what should I do to like cut down my personal carbon footprint? I say like, get involved on a local level. That's probably the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
And through that involvement, you'll probably also symptomatically be reducing your, meat intake, or reducing your travel, or reducing the amount of like times you ship an Amazon package or something, just because that's kind of in the zeitgeist. But the primary goal, I think, for people who are trying to have an impact is to get organized and start and like join organizations.
Apart from your YouTube channel, what are some other sources where people can find correct information about climate?
Sure. I like the IPCC as like kind of an aggregator of sources. There's a lot of good information on, like, it just pulls together research that scientists are doing. I think if you're looking for like a periodical, obviously take a lot of things with a grain of salt, but there's a lot of good newsletters out there, like climate focused newsletters. I really like Heated. I really like basically anything Amy Westervelt is up to. I just met Oliver Millman from The Guardian. I think he's a really good reporter. There's like a lot of Leah Stokes, Naomi Oreskes, Naomi Klein, Dr. Jeffrey Supran, a lot of those people are doctors. I just copy paste doctor in front of a lot of their names. And then strict periodical wise, like I like the Times, but the New York Times, but I also, they get a little wishy-washy and soft on a lot of issues that I think they should be a little harder on. For instance, they still take fossil fuel advertisement dollars and like run full page ads for fossil fuel companies. So like, that's kind of stupid. I think it's about varying your sources and then kind of like coalescing the commonalities. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a long-winded answer.
Perfect. That's perfect. You are a recipient of the Elevate Creatives Fund.
Am I?
Yeah.
I know. I'm sorry.
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. This is awesome.
So what do you plan to do with that fund?
I think I'm just going to pump it back into the Climate Town machine. Yeah. Like we like to consult with experts. I like to talk to artists and get artists to do the opening credits. So we're going to use some of that money for opening credits, the graphics. We have fact checkers. We have a staff, and that money can go a long way.
That's awesome. And
a boat. I'm going to buy a big boat.
as you should. Should. How much carbon footprint does that have?
It's easier to measure it in boat prints.
Okay.
So I would assume a really big. Okay. It's going to be a jet ski, but there's going to be like a little super engine in it to really burn some gasoline.
What's going to be your first destination?
Oh, got to be the Gulf Coast of where the biggest problem area, so I can make it worse. No, I obviously I'm not gonna buy a boat. Although I did teach small boat sailing when I was a Boy Scout camp counselor, so I like to think that if I had a boat, I could enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah, if this was not a career, then boats.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so I mean, I like to say this, and it's unfortunately true. If this wasn't I would like to get climate policy to a place where I think is like, oh, it's working properly, so that I can go back to making billiards videos on YouTube. Mm-hmm. That's my like first love, and I love pool so much, and I just want to play. If I had my druthers, I would just like play pool all day. You know, it's like I have a dog, and my dog doesn't like food, but previous dogs I've owned will just like eat as much food as you give them.
Yeah,
that's me and pool. I'm very pool table aggressive. Like, I'll just like play it as much as you'll let me.
I love that.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
We have a pool table here. You can play if you want.
I don't think I'm very good at it.
Okay.
But sure. Why not?
All right. So at the end of this podcast, we'll do one game.
Yes. Wrapping things up, what does success look like as a creator for you? And what is the hardest thing you've done in terms of your content?
I think success looks like when you make a thing that's better than you had hoped in the scripting phase. So for me, success looks like finding interesting pieces throughout the shoot, throughout the script and shoot, like finding interesting media that becomes part of the piece.
Yeah.
And like kind of surprising yourself, because we're like, we're working with these videos for a month or two at a time. They're not that surprising on some level. Yeah. So if you get surprised by it, I think it feels really good. Yeah, I think also like success looks like when you finish a video and you hit the final like export and you watch it back for the 50th time.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is good.
Yeah.
Like when you think to yourself, like, I made a good video, that's success. Even if it gets like the worst amount of views, like it does not affect me emotionally because I knew the video was good coming out of the gates.
And you put in a lot of work and you're happy with it. And the contentment of it.
Wow. Yes. Very good. Yeah.
Pun intended.
No, that was, it needs to be read. I hope people are reading the subtitles, but that's really good.
Yeah. What's the hardest thing you've done as a creator?
Getting like the sign off. The hardest part for me is like, oh, this script is ready to shoot. That's hard because I know there's a little more out there. It could always be a little better, a little funnier. But then I just trust that we're gonna pick it up in the back end. Like we're gonna shoot it and then we're gonna get it right in the edit.
Mm-hmm. What are your future projects?
More of the same. We're gonna knock out 2024. We're gonna put out a bunch of really good videos. I think I'm looking at the slate and a lot of them I'm like, wow, if we do this right, it'll be a really cool video. We got the Climate Deniers Playbook, the podcast. We're going to do some really good episodes there. We have a newsletter that the newsletter kind of like is the liner notes sort of the videos. And so those are really fun to just, there's no time constraint on those. So like if an interesting story came up in the video, but we didn't have time to put it into the video or it got cut for time or like it didn't quite fit, that's where the newsletter is where those go. And it's really interesting to see like what didn't fit in and what interesting stories we were able to uncover. And then of course we're hopefully going to have t-shirts, but not your normal t-shirts. We're going to like find the way to make them kind of ultra sustainable, but also look at the way they're currently like t-shirts in general are made. It's gonna be an interesting episode, And that's what I'm looking forward to that one too.
Merch. We love merch.
Yeah. And the world loves merch, but merch does not love the world. Yeah. Or maybe the other way around.
That's gonna be the soundbite.
We'll punch that up. I think whenever you say a soundbite and then you say maybe the other way around, it's like, okay, we gotta take one more pass at that soundbite.
You're on Patreon as well.
That's right.
So a lot of podcasters, a lot of YouTubers are getting on Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
What's your strategy there? And what is your recommendation for people who want to get onto Patreon?
Our current strategy leaves a lot to be desired. We're like trying to make sure that we're offering a better product this upcoming year. But I think it's like again, it comes back to like just be you and don't like put on a front and give your like be able to talk to your audience. Like people who are on Patreon, I think there's like kind of two versions of Patreon. One where people are like, oh, I like this person's work and I want to support them, and one where they like, oh, I want behind the scenes stuff. Yeah. So like figure out which one your audience is and make sure you're catering to that one, I think is the recommendation.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you very much for the award. That's very cool. Thanks for coming to my office.
Yeah.
That's very nice of you.
It's a cool space.
Thank you very much. Yeah. What else? No, I think just like if you're out there and you're listening to this and you've got any kind of climate anxiety, I would encourage you heavily to get involved at your local level. I guarantee you, unless you live in like one of 5 isolated tents in the world, like there's something for you out there, and you can get involved in some way, and it'll open up your current world to a bunch of other possibilities. And these are the things to track down if you're getting curious about the climate crisis.
And watch Climate Town's video.
Oh yeah, I would love. I mean, look, I don't know what you're up to right now. We got a channel full of videos. Check them out. If I was you, what would I start with? You know what? Any of them. Just give one a rip. And if it's not for you, freaking turn it off. Just hit the like button and then turn it off. Like, you don't have to watch it on my account.
What's your favorite? Like, speaking of, what's your favorite video that you've made so far?
My favorite video that I've made so far, I really liked the Keith McCoy video because I love hidden camera. Like, I love a sting operation. I think that's a cool move. I also had a lot of fun doing how the auto industry carjacked the American dream. I think that was like that one was a long time in the making, and it's the first video that Ben shot, and so it was nice to like have a product come out of that's like, oh, this is like got interesting angles, and we like used a boom. We use like a pole to do a shot that like looks really cool when you watch it back. It's like around the minute 1 or 2. Yeah. You'll know which shot we're talking about if you watch it. But we had a nice time. Like we did like a open topped bus, and it's a cool. I like that one a lot.
So those are the good starting points. So people who are new to your channel.
I think so. Yeah.
Awesome.
Also, like actually go to the most recent ones, because we've just like, we learn a lot every time we make a video. So like the more recent ones are a little bit better, probably.
Thank you so much for being at the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And congratulations.
Oh, thank you.